Hey, welcome back to 65 Drums. My name's Justin. Now, have you ever wanted a Pearl Mimic Pro, but you looked at your bank account and the bank said no? Well, then this video is for you because Steven Slate Drums is the sounds inside of that $2,000 module, but the software itself is like $120, sometimes $100 when it goes on sale. But the question is it actually any good compared to the competition around that price range? That's what I'm going to try to figure out in this video. I was given the software and add-ons for free from Steven Slate, but this is not a sponsored video. I'm going to give you the pros and cons and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that you need to open this with inside of a DAW. I use Reaper, but you can use whatever you want. And let's start off by talking about how many instruments are inside of this thing, because it packs a lot. If you get bored of that sound selection, there's also an additional 5 expansion packs you can buy. Now, the first thing that jumps out to me about that sound list is that there are a ton of kick and snare sounds. Now, some of those are one shot, so that probably inflates the number a little bit, but regardless, that is way more kick and snare sounds than I'll actually need to use. Okay, so before we jump ahead into the pros and cons of the software, let's actually do a quick tour so you can see what's going on and some of the features that it has. So over here under the Create tab, we have all the different instruments and all the different kits. The newest kits are under 5.5 Designer, and you can see we have like, I don't know, around a dozen right there. And then if you go over here to the Instrument tab, you can see every single individual kick and snare and tom and all the cymbals, and that way you can create your own stuff or layer sounds. If you take a look at the deluxe library of sounds and you go over here to snare drums, you got what you would probably expect. You got Pearl, you got Tama, you got Ludwig. If we go over here to kick drums, you'll see Gretsch and you'll see Yamaha and Pearl and all that sort of stuff, like the big names. And I think there's probably some unknown brands as well. When it comes to cymbals, you don't get any cymbal sounds under the classic volumes. You'll see what you'd probably expect: Zildjian, Paiste, and Sabian. Let's go over to the Editing tab. So if we select something by clicking on this avatar of the drum set, like the snare drum, you'll see you have microphones for the top of the snare, the bottom of the snare, and I really like this. You can adjust how ringy the snare drum sound is. I guess they just figured out what exact frequencies the ringiness is, and they've captured that as its own individual fader. You can adjust that over here in the Mixing tab as well. It looks very similar to the Edit tab, but now you have a row of faders for everything. Under Articulation, you'll see that you have adjustments to the volume for the center, the rim shot edge, side snare, side stick, rim click, and snare rolls. I don't think I've ever seen software let you adjust the volume of a snare roll. You also have a phase switch button, which can be very useful if you have, sort of sonic issues going on, combining different samples on top of each other. You've got the tuning control, which of course you'd expect, and you have panning. Now 4 tabs down is the MIDI mapping tab. Electronic drummers will need to use this in order to get it set up and working well with their electronic drums. Choose the kick drum, press MIDI learn, hit your kick drum once on the drum set, and now it's automatically assigned. Or maybe other people have already created presets, so you press load preset, you go online, you find a preset already made for your drum set, and you put it over here in the folder, and then you use that. Now the Grooves tab is something that electronic drummers won't really need to mess with. It's more made for songwriters. They don't know how to play drums, so they need to have MIDI data of someone else who's good at drums play it for them, and then they can mix and match, and the software will play itself. Now over here in the Settings tab, you might need to adjust some things like resampling quality. I've set it to maximum. Drum kit detail, I've set it to full. You might need to adjust how big the plugin is. Apparently the old version of the software didn't let you adjust the size of it. So now you can make it 150. When I do that, it's way too big for this tiny little laptop that I use. Okay, so now that we've done the quick tour and we've gone over the specs of the software, let me give you my pros and cons, like the strengths and weaknesses of using this with eDrums, in my opinion, compared to the competition. Now, the software has been around for a while, and because of that, it can work on very low-powered machines. The next thing I like is the pure number of sounds. This does have more sounds than the average drum plugin around its price. Something else I like about the software is how many microphones I've got. It depends on the kind of sample you're working with though. If you're messing with like an older sample, it might not have an individual mic for the top of the snare and the bottom and all the different room mics, but some of the newer sounds do. There's been some processing done on most of these samples already. So they already cut through the mix, they already sound fantastic. Something else cool about this program is that you can view it in two ways. You can look at the whole drum set like this and avatar the drums, or you can take a look at like the cell version of it as well. Okay, so now let's jump ahead into the downsides, the cons of using this software. The first thing to mention is that if you want to be able to adjust the compression and the EQ and all that stuff, you can't do that within the drum plugin. It just makes the sounds. You have to do that inside of your DAW that you had to open this up in. The next downside is electronic drum functionality. Now, don't get me wrong, it works perfectly fine with my electronic drums. But as far as like how fancy the interface is and how easy it is to get your electronic drums working perfect with the drum software, I would have to say the competition has done it better. If you take a look at EdrumCenter 3, you have a whole menu to adjust the open and close of the hi-hat with these sliders, which is much more intuitive than how Steven Slate Drums does it. You have to go adjust where tip open 1 is, tip open 2, tip open 3, and you have to do all these MIDI learned things in order to get that all working perfectly, as opposed to just a slider. Or if adjusting splash sensitivity, this dial over here on the right inside of EdrumCenter 3. I'm guessing you can probably download module presets somewhere and just get a whole list of them, but inside of EdrumCenter or Superior Drummer, they have a list of like 70 different modules from every company you can think of, at least most of them. The only other thing this can really do as far as adjusting for your electronic drum playing is the velocity curve over here. I can raise it or lower it and adjust the range and dynamics. Now again, it works perfectly fine with my electronic drums, but as far as attention to detail, making it really, really easy to get working with your electronic drums and getting that next level of polish, it's not quite there compared to TuneTrack. And the final downside of using Steven Slate Drums is just the simple fact that the software is super popular. That's not a downside for me, but I could see a potential buyer out there going, I want something that's raw, it's underground, no one's ever heard of these sounds, they haven't been used on 100 albums. It's kind of out of the blue, it's indie. Well then, Steven Slate Drums 5 is not for you. Steven Slate Drums 5.5 really excels at polished, radio-ready rock sounds that cut through the mix. By definition, that will make it good for some people and bad for other people. Okay, so taking all the pros and cons and the specs and the price tag into consideration, is this worth buying? I would have to say yes, it is a good piece of software. It's not sounds that no one's ever heard of before, and at $120 at its regular price tag, it's still kind of close to EdrumCenter 3, which I do think is a better program than this, but especially if you can get it when it's on sale at $100, it's a lot cheaper. And for some people, they don't want to spend close to $200 on a drum plugin, they have a budget closer to $100. And if that's the case, this is the best one that I know of at that price tag. You don't have to buy it cold. Go download Steven Slate Drums 5 free edition. I actually covered it in this video right here. You get access to the entire interface with one free kit. You can get a feel for the type of sound that Steven Slate Drums have, because they definitely have their own sonic fingerprint in all of their samples. And you can figure out if the software is for you without having to spend a dime. And that's the video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you all in a few.